Dudes to Dads, brought to you by Dad University, is a podcast to help men understand and navigate the transition of being a single dude into a family man. How do we make sense of it all? Well, we probably won't be able to, but let's go ahead and have some fun trying. And we are back.
We are back.
I'm Jason Kreidman.
I'm Alan Bush.
And this is Dudes to Dads again. Episode 148.
148. We're 2 episodes away from 150, according to my math.
I know. And we're doing a little Facebook Live. So for those who are going to join us there, welcome. But we're also recording this as we normally do as a podcast.
Yes.
So we don't actually record this for video.
Correct.
So we're not as animated and excited as a typical video might be. But for someone who does listen to the podcast or wants to see the behind the scenes and all the great, wonderful technical things that happen here.
All the wires.
For the 20 minutes of me trying to get the video to work.
What was wrong with it?
I don't know. Nothing's wrong with it. It's wrong with me.
Gotcha. Okay.
That's the problem. I'm owning it. I just have a little bit of technical difficulties.
Gotcha.
So as I said, episode 148, title for today's show, The Best 80s TV Shows to Learn Parenting.
Yeah, right on.
Yes.
I dig it.
So,
and for those who weren't born in the 80s, go back to the 80s and check it out on YouTube or something.
Yeah, I mean, maybe not born in the 80s, but lived through the 80s.
Lived through the 80s,
yeah. You know, it was funny. I was talking to my assistant today, and who happens to be about almost half my age. And I'm going down some of these things and was talking about it, and he just was like, oh, no, never heard of that. Yeah. Nope, never heard of that one either.
And there's some shows that you might have heard of.
There's a couple, yes.
But there's a lot that you haven't. I was talking, I don't know if, well, I'll wait. But but there's like, there's some other, I was like, remember that show? And I looked it up and I'm like, and it was like on for like 4 or 5 seasons or something. Right. It was a popular show at that time.
Right. No, so, I chose the 80s because that's a time where I probably watch the most TV.
Me too.
Yeah. As I've gotten older, I watch a lot less TV to almost no TV.
Yeah.
However, I have caught some episodes of some of these shows and have shared them with my kids.
Oh, nice.
And they've loved it. So we have, the streaming services and whatever I won't name. But so they have had a chance to see it. And as a result, I'm now watching it from a completely different perspective. Whereas I watched these shows as a child and enjoyed, the chaos and all the stuff that was going on the show, I'm now looking at it from a parenting perspective and watching some of the amazing lessons and advice that is being dispensed on these shows.
Sure.
The writer, and I'm sure now I have to say, I'm sure that is existing now too, or there are some great shows. I just don't know them and don't watch TV.
Yeah, well, there was Mark Maron had a good point. He's like, not only do I not know the show, but I don't even know what network it is. There's so much choice out there. Right. So you go to like Netflix or whatever the things are, not Netflix, but like Roku or Apple TV or something.
Sure.
There's I think 1,000 different channels you can watch stuff on.
Right.
So there's just a lot of content out there.
Yeah. So I'm picking stuff that I'm familiar with. I'm sure there are others. If anybody has any feedback, Alan, what should they do?
Should email us, podcast@dudesToDads.com, or get us on Twitter @DudesToDads and Facebook, where we are now.
Right.
DudesToDads.com.
Okay. So let's get to it. So I wanted to compile this list specifically for parenting because you can watch these shows. They are appropriate, if you will. There's no real graphic or language really that's that bad.
Yeah.
And then when I watched these as a kid, like I said, I love them, but now I have a totally new level of respect for the knowledge that they're sharing.
Yeah.
So, and there's some family values. There's all kinds of stuff. So let's get to the list.
Sure.
First one, Family Ties.
Family Ties. All right. Michael Keaton. What's his name? Michael J. Fox's like a breakout performance.
Yeah, and it's funny because I was trying to remember and I was going to write down all of the characters.
I thought that would take way too long. No.
So basically, Family Ties is the parents of 2 girls and 1 boy.
Yep.
The boy, like you said.
Michael J. Fox.
The parents are hippies. Essentially, they were hippies, very liberal.
Yep.
And then the son. And I'm saying this as if somebody doesn't know the show. So I mean, it's
there's some people who out there who probably don't.
And the son is very conservative.
Yeah, he's super Republican. Alex P. Keaton.
So he's very conservative. Wears a tie in high school. Just really, really funny. So some of the things that I really like about this show is that the parents and the kids have very different views. Yet these parents allow their children to find their way. And they really were great coaches and mentors to kind of guide them by still allowing them to be themselves and be an individual.
Right.
And I saw that like with their son who just totally believes different stuff than they do.
For sure.
And that's something that's, it's interesting as a parent because your children are not necessarily going to believe the same way that you do or want to do the same things or whatever. And I thought this was a really good example of that. And loving show, loving family, always coming together in the end. The other daughter is kind of rebellious and they like play her as like kind of airheaded, and then the younger one is like too smart for her own good. So it's just the dynamics are really interesting. So I thought that was a good
And that was a fun show.
Yeah, very fun. And I've introduced, as I said, these to my kids and they love them. And they're 7 and 9. So
cool.
They're age appropriate. They're some of the themes are serious.
Well, that's the whole, because sitcoms back then weren't always just about comedy. I mean, they had some serious elements.
They tackled legit issues for sure.
Yeah.
Second one, Cosby Show.
The Cosby Show.
So now, while the real life, Bill Cosby has had some major legal and moral issues.
I'm really glad you brought this one up because I was worried that we were going to leave it off the list because of the Bill Cosby.
The quality of the show, it is hard great. Because many people, I don't know the situation or the status of it. But, many people said, I will never watch the show, whatever. But there's a tremendous amount of value out of that show.
That was a great show.
For many, many reasons. The diversity, this was a wealthy minority family. All kinds of stuff.
And one was a lawyer, one was a doctor.
Yeah, at the time, it was like... That wasn't seen on TV and the role models and that kind of stuff. They're raising 5 kids.
5 kids.
All different ages.
4 girls and 1 boy.
Theo.
Theo.
They tackled some serious stuff. Cheating in school. Boyfriend, girlfriend issues. All kinds of stuff like that.
I remember dyslexia.
Dress codes. Just really, really good stuff. And the thing about I really liked with this is that the parents had deep discussions with their kids. The parents were strict. He's like I said, you said he's a doctor and lawyer. She's a lawyer. But they were very strict, very loving. But it was the dynamic was really, really good and really, really interesting. And so there's a lot of lessons on that show too. But with both of these so far, they've had the way that the parents deal with the kids is very deep. They have the discussion. They're open and honest. They talk about stuff that it needs to be talked about. And I just think it's a good way to emulate. And watching that.
They did really. When they sang to the grandparents, they had those episodes. Where they performed for the grandparents.
The best ever. I don't know how many times I've watched this. Is they have a sleepover episode with the little one. Rudy,
they have
all the neighbors,
all the friends.
And I think 80% of that is ad lib.
It is.
And he was a genius.
He basically just filmed what he would normally do with his kids. So it's so fun.
It was really, really good. So number 3, different strokes.
Different strokes.
What you talking about, Alan? So I've introduced this to my kids. They can't get enough of it. So the funny part of it is it's an old white rich guy who adopts 2 young black kids.
They were actually his like housekeeper's kids, and the housekeeper. That's the weird part about that whole show. They realize
they kind of go around.
It was weird. They kind of almost sidestepped it, but like their mom died, and then basically he adopted them. So and the dynamic between them is just exceptional. Like there's no other way to explain it. Mr. D, as Drummond, as he is called, he often finds himself in dilemmas. There was a daughter as well, a little bit older than the kids. But he often talked through the situations with sort of a wisdom and like,
experience because he was an older guy. I mean, he was like, almost like grandpa-esque.
Oh, right. Yeah.
You know? Yeah. And so from a parenting standpoint, I just thought he was very wise. He would sit them down and explain. And the dynamic was very interesting because they came from poverty. Mm-hmm. They're now in a rich area, the ethnic differences and everything else. But yet none of that mattered.
Yeah.
You know, he so loved those kids.
Yeah.
And the effort that he put into that as a father was just awesome.
Yeah. He really learned from them as well, because certain things that they brought perspective from being in lower income housing before, they would understand, he kind of
he wasn't too
wasn't like stuffy or anything.
No, but he wasn't arrogant,
right?
That he wasn't accepting to understand their point of view,
right? Yeah,
like he's like, well, tell me about that, or show me, or and he was really interested in what they had to add to the conversation.
Yeah,
so it was cool. So I introduced to my kids that, and what you talking about, with them. There's a YouTube video that literally has like 200 to those string together.
Gary Coleman,
saying it to his mom, his dad, the dentist, just over and over. It is hilarious if you're a fan of that show. So and the perfection at which he probably crafted that, and the look and the turn and his face and his lips, like how he put it all together. It's just pretty cool.
That's funny.
Number 4, Webster.
I remember Webster.
So Webster's parents died.
That was a very similar show.
So he was sort of left, and he went to live with and he's a young black kid.
Yeah.
He went to live with his dad's friend, like a football friend, George Papadopoulos.
Yeah.
And George is this big, football white guy.
He was literally a football player. I think it was Mike Ditka or something.
And he was, really inexperienced in parenting.
Yeah.
And so, and that's what I think was interesting about it, and why I added this. It's like he really loved the child.
Yeah. And
the fact that he didn't know how to parent was kind of the charm of the show. And you watch him struggle, as all parents do. It's like, just because it wasn't, quote, his child. He loved that child like a his own. And then you watch the struggling of him, I think it was Catherine, the woman who, I don't know if it was, it was his, I don't know if it was
Mrs. Papadopoulos.
Wife. Yeah, but I don't know if it may have just wife or girlfriend.
No, I think it was his wife.
But basically,
they didn't have a kid, or they couldn't conceive or something.
Yeah, and she was warm too, and she was very loving, but they just didn't know how to act.
Yeah, right.
And it was so funny to watch that, and now watching it again. But he had such a good, strong bond with that child.
Yeah.
And that was, so the point I'm trying to make is that he didn't know about parenting, like almost all of us, yet he, love got him through.
Right.
And I think that was an important thing. And that dealt with a lot of topics too, because Webster was very, very small, kind of like Gary Coleman, but even smaller.
Even smaller, yeah.
Bullying, lots of stuff like that he dealt with at school, and being teased and all kinds of stuff. So my kids really, really liked it too because of that. He was sort of, he was overcoming things.
Yeah.
He had adversities, that kind of thing. So
for sure.
Just great topics, just the stuff that they cover is really, really good.
Yeah.
Number 5, growing pains.
Growing pains, yeah.
So the dad,
Alan
Thicke, who we had.
That's right.
Yes.
He responded to our show.
So we had tweeted to a couple of, quote, celebrity dads or famous dads. And I actually had asked them, what's some advice?
Yeah.
And he tweeted, he was one of the few that actually responded and said, what's the best dad advice? He said, love your kids and then love them more, which is just awesome.
Yeah.
And he ended up passing away, I think 24 or 48 hours after that.
After he tweeted that, yeah.
And it was one of his last, posts or communications. And so, it was crazy because we had a huge flood of activity on Twitter and all that. And just, it was mentioned in the news quite a bit. And the cool thing was, until the end, he was just a dedicated dad.
Absolutely, yeah, right. And that show was basically
the same thing. He was America's father.
Exactly.
So he was a doctor. He was actually a psychiatrist, and he worked from home. So he had a ton of interactions with the children. There's 3 kids, very distinctive personalities.
The older teenage boy. Kirk Cameron.
Kirk Cameron.
Yeah.
But there's some weird guy because there was Leonardo DiCaprio ended up coming on the show.
Somehow, like before he got super famous.
Yeah. But they're always were getting into mischief, squabbling, solving problems. His perspective was a little bit more doctor-esque.
Sure.
Because he was the psychiatrist.
Analytical.
Yeah, he was. He wasn't as warm and fuzzy, but yet he still was.
Yeah,
in a
he
weird
still had
way.
a good warmth about him. Yeah.
And then the wife too, just sort of just a lot of energy, and she had her own opinions about stuff, and so Growing Pains it was a great show. I watched that as a kid just all the time.
Yeah. Is that two boys and one girl? The kids?
Yeah, and then Ben.
Yeah.
I remember all this. I have so much stuff that I can't remember from that.
We can remember Growing Pains' youngest son.
Right. Ben, Mike, and
I don't remember.
Can't think of her name.
I think her name was Tracy Gold, her real name.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So that one was great. Number 6, Full House.
Full House.
So it actually started in the late 80s, but was kind of more known
ran
in
into the
early
90s. Yeah, for sure.
So this one is really good from a dad perspective because there was 3 men in the house acting as, quote, dads.
Sure.
So that was a very interesting dynamic too.
Yeah.
Lots of good advice. Uncle Jesse.
The
best hair in the country.
Yeah, John Stamos' career came off of that.
They would always talk it out. Like, they'd sit on the end of the bed and they'd talk it out. And so that was the Olsen twins.
The Olsen twins. They played one person, but they alternated
so each kid on any given show was having a bunch of issues that had to be solved. And
3 girls. And as far as the kids were concerned, there's 3 girls. There's an older, a middle one, and a younger. The youngest one was the oldest Olsen twins.
Correct.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And then they brought on 2 little twin boys.
Did they?
Yeah.
I think it's time.
That was Jesse and somebody. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
By the way, Bob Saget, the guy who played the dad of the show, he's the only one who was that. It was
actually his kid.
It was his kids, and then there was like the cousin or something, and then Uncle Jesse. I don't know how they were related to them. Yeah. But Bob Saget's comedy
is different.
Is a lot different than he even admits. He goes like, a lot of people think my comedy is very similar to how I am on the show.
Very blue.
Funniest home videos. He hosted that. Yeah, if you go see his comedy after watching that show, be aware that he's a little bit more. He swears a little bit more. It's a little more R-rated.
No, that's funny. And so now they've even brought back, I guess, Fuller House.
Oh, right.
Which is the newer version of it. They're all grown up. Yeah. And so, that'll be interesting. I think I caught an episode briefly of that to try to, but it's not the same thing, but it's got its own place and people love that show.
Yeah.
So that was good. Number 7, Roseanne. So this was unique for its time too. It was a middle-class family and really showing a strong woman and specifically a working woman.
Yeah.
She had a job. They both worked.
Wait, she was wasn't dolled up. She was overweight. She crass.
Yeah.
I mean, Roseanne Barr that's what her life really.
Yeah,
the lower middle class.
Well, she was just no apologies. I mean, it was like, this is how I am. This is how I and she talked to her kids. Granted, a little different.
Yeah.
So I'm not necessarily saying all the techniques, but I think what was interesting is sort of the dynamic is that she was. They were stern with the kids too. I mean, they really, really cared about the well-being of their children.
Yeah.
And what's funny is because, I've seen the actors that were on that show outside and they felt like a family.
Yeah.
They grew up on the show.
Sure.
And so,
and then John Goodman's character, who was the dad. Like you said, he was, they were still loving and warm, but they were stern at times and they really kind of.
It was realistic.
Yeah.
I think that was the part of it. Whereas a lot of the shows showed this sort of glamour and everything's perfect and whatever. This was one of the shows that just showed no, there's a bunch of problems. Granted, other shows tackled problems, but just they dealt with it in a different way. And so I think it was interesting to see a different perspective.
Right.
And so, he was a very, he was like a teddy bear. He was stern when he needed to be.
Yeah.
They didn't mess around. They listened to dad.
Yeah. Exactly.
And but at the same time, he was really warm with them and affectionate and
affectionate towards Roseanne. Character. They showed him
they showed a loving relationship together.
Sure.
They parented together, and so I thought that was a good show as well.
Yeah.
Number 8, and this is the last one and probably my favorite of any show as it relates to parenting, the Brady Bunch.
The Brady Bunch. That's not 80s. That's 70s.
70s, but it went into
the 80s for sure. And reruns.
It was worse in the 80s, but it was good in the 70s.
Yeah, of course.
I watched it in the 80s, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I watched it in the 80s too. Reruns, a lot of reruns.
Right. So the husband and wife each had spouses, I believe, who passed.
I think so.
And they each had 3 kids.
Yep.
And they came together as the Brady Bunch.
Yeah. The dad had 3 male boys and the woman had 3
girls.
Females.
The life lessons in these episodes, so I introduced it with my kids because I was trying to find, I remember one day, like, something that was on that was appropriate for them when they were, a little bit younger. And I remember like watching the first episode again and going, oh my goodness, like this is so good. Like the dad sat the child down and was explaining the situation. And like his advice was so in line with the parenting classes and like, a lot of that stuff. Yeah. It was like, allowing them to fail, just all these kinds of concepts and things of coaching the kid instead of like parenting and scolding them. It's like they had to learn their lesson, themselves, like just really, really good involved parents.
Yeah.
And so, I remember they dealt with bullying. They dealt with a lot of like how the kids treat each other,
right?
Internally, because there'd be like squabbles between all the kids.
Yeah, because they had pairs of like teenagers, of middle kids, and of really young kids.
Right. And so there's always squabbling, always like competition and all that kind of stuff. So it's really like sibling rivalry was a bunch of good topics. Yeah. So there's a lot of good stuff on there. I think just how to get along with other people. Brothers and sisters, of course. But, in the end, there was like so much love, even though they got on each other's nerves.
Right. For sure.
And I think that's a lot of families identify with that. It's like, the family can upset you or get on your nerves, but the reality is that there's still a lot of love there.
Right.
And it's unconditional love and it'll always be.
Yeah.
So my overall thing is like, maybe TV's not that bad,
in the right context. I think it's
I think introducing these things, whether it is to your children or you're going to watch these yourself, maybe rediscover some of these shows. Like, once in a while, it's kind of cool to watch.
Yeah.
I think that there is some practical, real scenarios on these shows that the writers did a really good job, at least from my perspective of trying to teach parents to be involved and allowing their children to grow and respect and all these kinds of things that we talk about. A lot of these shows did that,
right?
And so it was interesting.
Yeah.
It just gave me sort of a renewed fondness for these shows from a different perspective.
Absolutely. I have a lot of nostalgia for those shows as well. I've watched all of them that you mentioned, and now I want to go to YouTube and find all those.
Hulu.
Hulu, they're on Hulu. That's right. Yeah.
Most of them are.
For sure. That was fun.
No, that's cool. So if anybody has any of their own favorite shows, Alan, what should they do?
You should email us, podcast@dudesToDads.com, or you can hit us up on Twitter @DudesToDads or Facebook, DudesToDads.com, if hopefully you're listening right now. And go to YouTube and watch all the Dudes to Dads and Dad University goodness, and find out, leave some comments in the video sections and be like, hey, by the way, you forgot to mention this 80s show. And then iTunes and Stitcher, please leave reviews and subscribe to those channels. It really helps perpetuate the show, and we really appreciate the feedback.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Alan.
Thank you.
As always, we will see you next time.
See you next time.